The station clock claimed I had been waiting 12 minutes, which was impressive because it had taken only 3 for my patience to file a formal complaint and resign in protest. Around me, the transit hall hummed with the kind of quiet that cost several trillion credits to engineer. Gravity stabilizers whispering, light panels adjusting themselves with offended dignity whenever someone blinked too aggressively, and a line of officials standing so straight they looked less like beings and more like architectural features. I sat where I wasn't supposed to sit. That much was clear from the glances. The bench didn't have a color code, no insignia, no holographic label explaining who it was for, which apparently made it deeply suspicious. In a place where everything had a rank, an unlabeled bench was an act of rebellion. That was when she sat down beside me. No warning chime, no escort drones, just a soft shift of weight, as casual as gravity allowed. I noticed the ears first, not because they were dramatic, but because they didn't fit the station's obsession with symmetry. Long, tapering slightly back, unmistakably not human. I did what any reasonable person would do when confronted with a clear sign of alien biology in an otherwise dull afternoon. "So," I said, "do those come with enhanced hearing, or are they just there to make interstellar hats a nightmare?" She laughed, not politely. Actually laughed, like I'd surprised her into it. "That," she said, "is the most practical question anyone has asked me today." "Well, I try," I replied. "I'm terrible with names and even worse with titles, so I stick to survival topics." She angled her body toward me, relaxed in a way that felt contagious. Around us, the officials stiffened further, which I assumed was coincidence. In this place, everyone always looked like they were bracing for bad news or a performance review from the universe itself. "You're not wearing a designation," she said. "I left it in my other civilization," I answered. "I find life's simpler when nobody knows who you're supposed to be." That earned me a curious look. Not judgmental, interested. Like I'd said something she hadn't been allowed to hear before. We watched a delegation pass, robes shimmering with embedded star maps, ranks pulsing softly above their heads like nervous thoughts made visible. They moved with the seriousness of people who believed the galaxy would collapse if they walked too fast. "Let me guess," I said. "Important?" "Very," she replied. "They always are," I said. "Funny thing is, they all walk the same. You'd think ultimate power would come with better posture." She covered her mouth, shoulders shaking slightly. I decided I liked her immediately. Anyone who laughed here was either very brave or very bored. "What brings you to the station?" she asked. "Travel," I said. "Waiting. Mostly waiting. Humanity's greatest contribution to interstellar culture is proving that patience is optional." She tilted her head, ears shifting with the motion. "You're comfortable here." "I sit where there's space," I said. "I talk to whoever sits next to me. Life's too big to spend it whispering because someone else has a shinier badge." Her gaze lingered on me, thoughtful now. Around us, the air felt subtly tighter. like the station itself was listening. A security drone drifted closer, then seemed to reconsider its life choices and drifted away again. "Does it not concern you," she asked carefully, "that you don't know who I am?" I smiled. "If you needed me to know, you'd have told me. Otherwise, you're just someone killing time like the rest of us." For a moment, something unreadable crossed her expression. Relief, maybe. Or surprise. Or the quiet thrill of stepping out of a role no one else would let you leave. "You make jokes about things others fear," she said. "Fear's terrible for conversation," I replied. "Plus, if the universe wanted me intimidated, it wouldn't have given me sarcasm." She laughed again, more freely this time, and stayed seated. And in that small, unmarked space between ranked worlds and glowing authority, it felt, for reasons I didn't yet understand, that something important had just decided to pretend it was ordinary. We kept sitting there far longer than etiquette would allow, which in that station meant longer than 6 seconds. The bench did not eject us. No alarms screamed, and no ancient law tablets cracked open to smite us, which I took as a good sign. Somewhere above, a schedule recalibrated itself for the 7th time, clearly offended by my existence. "You know," I said, "back home, when two strangers sit together this long, it usually ends in friendship or a restraining order." "Which outcome do you anticipate?" she asked. "I'm flexible," I said. "Depends on whether you try to conquer my planet." She smiled, and I had the odd sensation that several distant empires might have just felt a disturbance without knowing why. A group of attendants passed us again. Not new ones. The same ones. I was starting to think they were orbiting us out of professional anxiety. One of them glanced at her ears, then at me, then at the bench, like he was trying to solve a puzzle missing all the corner pieces. "You're not from here," she said. "No one's from here," I replied. "This place feels like it was designed by a committee that outlawed joy." That's surprisingly accurate. "I have a gift." She shifted slightly closer, lowering her voice. Though nothing about the station suggested sound traveled in a way that respected secrets. People don't usually talk to me like this. "That because they're intimidated?" I asked. "Yes." "I get that," I said. "I once met a vending machine that charged me double because it sensed weakness." She laughed again, then stopped herself, glancing toward the officials. Several of them pretended very hard not to notice, which was impressive considering how intensely they were noticing. "Does your species truly ignore hierarchy?" she asked. "We acknowledge it exists," I said. "We just don't let it decide who gets to be human to us." Or person. Sorry. Still adjusting the vocabulary. That adjustment alone has caused 3 diplomatic incidents this cycle. "Low record," I said proudly. She studied me as if I were a strange artifact that had wandered in without paperwork. "If someone important sat beside you," she said slowly, "someone whose presence altered treaties by breathing in the wrong direction, you would speak to them the same way?" "Probably," I said, "unless they were rude. Then I'd upgrade the sarcasm." Her lips parted, then closed again, and something in her posture shifted. Not power, something subtler, like weight settling into place. "You're dangerous," she said. "I've been told," I replied, "usually by my mother." A sudden chime rippled through the hall. Not loud, respectful. The kind that implied people should feel honored it bothered to exist. Every official straightened in perfect unison. Ranks flared brighter. A corridor of empty space formed instinctively around us. Except she didn't stand. Neither did I. "That one," I muttered. "Sounds expensive." "It is," she said, eyes forward. An attendant approached, stopped 3 steps away and bowed. Not to me. He hesitated, clearly unsure what to do about the fact that she was sitting next to a human who looked like he belonged to the furniture. He began, then faltered, glancing at me again. Sweat beaded on his forehead in 0-point gravity defiance. "Your presence is requested." "In a moment," she said. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear my own thoughts, considering whether this was the time to run. The attendant bowed again and retreated like someone who had just spoken to a star and lived. I exhaled. Wow, you get service like that, and you didn't even order anything. She finally turned to me, expression unreadable, but warm. "Does this change anything for you?" I shrugged. "You're still someone sitting on a suspiciously rebellious bench." Her eyes softened. "Most beings see me only after they know what I am." "Well," I said, standing at last, "that sounds exhausting. For what it's worth, I liked you better before the dramatic chime." She laughed quietly, then stood as well. The hall seemed to lean toward her, gravity recalibrating out of respect. "I think," she said, "this conversation may cause problems." "Story of my life," I said, "but usually the good kind." As she walked away, surrounded now by distance and deference, I realized something unsettling. I hadn't felt small sitting beside her, and judging by the way she glanced back just once, neither had she. By the time they summoned me, half the station had already decided I was either a diplomatic prodigy or a contagious mistake. The other half was still running simulations to determine how I had survived sitting next to her without spontaneously apologizing. The room they brought me into was larger than necessary, which I'd learned was the universal sign of authority in security. She was there already, standing at the center, her long ears unmistakable now that no one pretended not to see them. Rank glyphs hovered behind her like obedient ghosts. Everyone else stood far back, forming a respectful semicircle that screamed, "Please, don't let this be our fault." "You're late," she said when she saw me. "They confiscated my sense of direction at the door," I replied. "Standard procedure, I assume." A few officials flinched. One looked like he was about to faint. She smiled, just barely, and the room exhaled with her. They began talking immediately. Councils always do. Titles, accusations, probabilities, projected outrage curves. Someone used the phrase unprecedented social contamination, which I assumed referred to me. I waited patiently, nodding like I understood interstellar law, which was easier than admitting I didn't. Finally, she raised a hand. Silence fell so hard it could have cracked the floor. You all seem very concerned, she said, about what happened. Yes, one of them said. The optics alone. I chose anonymity, she interrupted. I chose to sit. I chose to speak. And most importantly, I chose not to be treated as what I am. A murmur rippled outward. She turned to me. Tell them what you thought I was. I considered lying. Then I remembered the bench. I thought you were someone killing time, Mom, I said. Maybe avoiding paperwork. Definitely smarter than the station. The silence that followed wasn't shocked. It was thoughtful, dangerous in its own way. He spoke freely, she continued, because he saw no power. Only a person. Do you know how rare that is? Someone whispered something about protocols. Someone else about security breaches. She laughed. Actually laughed. Your systems can predict rebellions, but cannot recognize sincerity. That, she said, is the flaw humans stumble through without noticing. They argued. Of course they did. But the tone had shifted. Less fear, more uncertainty. When it was over, after votes, concessions, and a hastily drafted addendum to about 12 sacred doctrines, they let me go. No charges, no erasure, just a warning, which I framed mentally as a souvenir. She walked with me to the exit corridor, the distance between us carefully measured by people who still didn't understand what mattered. You caused quite a stir, I said. So did you, she replied, without trying. Pure talent. She stopped. You changed how they see you and how I see them. That sounds expensive. It will be, she said, but worth it. I hesitated. So, what happens now? She considered me for a long moment, not as an authority, not as a mystery, just as someone she'd shared a bench with. Now, she said, I rule differently. And me? You go back to being yourself, she said, but you'll notice something. What's that? Power will feel smaller. She stepped back, rank reclaiming its space around her. But before she turned away, she added, Next time we meet, I won't hide. Next time, I said, I'll bring snacks. Her laughter followed me down the corridor. Later, on another station, I found myself sitting beside a stranger again. Different species. Different stars. Same silence. I didn't check their insignia. I just said hello.